their account.
Hey, how's it going? How's it going, people, on your Sunday afternoon? Mischievous Heathen here, and look, I got a little title screen. I'm happy at my I can accomplish such technical marvels. Welcome to Heretical Weekends number 50. Actually, uh,
Wow.
it's been 50. That's a
Wow.
freaking long time.
Yeah.
That's a lot of months. Yeah, Heretical Weekends number 50. We will be talking about the Ehrman versus Price debate that happened, which I didn't get to see because I'm a bad monkey, and Gava Guy did see. So I'm joined with Gava Guy today, and maybe one other guy if he gets off his lazy ass.
Turtle will not be joining us.
Oh yes, and Turtle will not be joining us because Turtle has actual real life stuff that is more important than being on the internet and stroking our e-peens to who is actually right in the great debate community. And as always, fuck Arcane Logos and Trey Jadlow, you piece of shit. So thought I would switch the Trey Jadlow thing up a little bit. So you sent me a link. Let's just get into this shit because
Sure.
I don't know much about it and I didn't get to see it because I try to watch the debate at work. And at work, I'm working with a lot of numbers and shit. And so um, none of these guys, either of these guys, it didn't seem like it was a very exciting debate. So I didn't really get into it like I wanted to. But you sent me a link for a Bart Ehrman versus is it
Robert
Richard Price?
Price.
Robert Price.
Yeah.
And Price takes the mythicist atheist position, as you say, and Bart
Yeah, and
Ehrman
this
is.
we should say this debate took place, I think, in October, maybe even a year and a half ago or something.
Oh,
But
did it?
yeah, but
Oh,
the reason that I sent the link and that it's kind of something to talk about now is they just took the paywall down on YouTube. Mythicist Milwaukee has had it up behind a paywall, and so it was restricted access. Well, now
okay.
those of us who refuse to pay for content.
Right. That's cheap bastards.
Yeah.
So essentially, Ehrman is this scholarly dude who wrote a shit ton of books. He's like a
Yep.
professor and stuff like that. His position is what? That Jesus existed but is not divine. Is that the?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he takes a very historical and academic position. And Robert Price apparently has a doctorate. I don't know. I don't know if he's one of
He,
these. He looks like
Robert
Santa.
Price. No, he looks like every dungeon master that I ever played D&D with. He looks like every cosplayer that I see like when I go to Comic Con and that kind of thing. But I didn't really. I wanted to listen to it. You sent it to me Wednesday or Thursday, and
Yeah,
I got sick Friday, and so I've been in bed for 2 days essentially. So I didn't get a chance to see it because I was medicated, both legitimate. But well, I was medicated with various medicinal things that made me feel better. So
yeah.
I didn't get a chance to see it. So, but what I did do was peruse the comments. I'm not sure if that counts for anything. It probably doesn't. But there seemed to be people that have taken some issue with how Price framed his arguments. What's your first of all? What's your overall sort of opinion of the debate? Did it go well? Was it boring as fuck?
I find it interesting. I mean, I always enjoy Bart Ehrman. I mean, he to me is really. I think he's a great speaker. Um, he comes from a background that is similar to my own as far as being fundamentalist, and um, I find his scholarship and just the way he communicates it very compelling. Um, his arguments I think are well presented, and he presents a lot of evidence that I feel is compelling for criticisms of the fundamentalist kind of interpretations of the Bible and claims about authorship and all of those kinds of things. I think he just knocks it out of the park and kind of shoots those ideas down very handily. and I think, Ehrman and Price both kind of agree on a lot of those points, but Price and a lot of that is pretty accepted scholarship even among a lot of Christian academics. But where they deviate and where Price kind of steps out of that academic, what's the word, consensus, is on his views about dating, like the Gospels, and also, even Paul, what is part of just very standard Pauline.
None of us know what you're talking about.
Sorry?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well,
so can you frame it in a way where we like dopes like me can understand?
I can try.
Speak slowly and use small words.
So, it's almost universally among academics accepted that the Apostle Paul was a real figure in history, a real historical figure,
okay.
And that he, authored a number of epistles. Now, there's some debate among scholars about which epistles, but there are some that are fairly firmly held to be Pauline, genuinely authored by Paul. And I don't know exactly which, but I think Romans falls into that, and First Corinthians, I believe, also, is within that group of epistles, which are the epistles are letters. They're letters from Paul or other, disciples.
I can't just call them fucking letters.
Well, because that's like I don't know, whatever.
It just makes things confusing for morons like myself. You know what I'm saying? Like we go, epistle, yeah. What the fuck is that? All right. Whatever. But okay.
But so, anyways,
it's pretty much accepted that Paul exists. Okay.
Yeah. And Price is even kind of like somewhat questioning that. And Ehrman, based on his acceptance that Paul was a real figure, that there are contemporary writers who talk about Paul, who interacted with him and things, and there's a legacy of people that kind of came after him who had interacted with him and things like that. So there's there's firm foundations. And Ehrman, in the question and answer section, because someone from the audience says, well, how do you establish the existence and life of Paul from a historical perspective? And Ehrman says, well, you do it the same way you would do any other historical figure. There's, like, what's the Caesar Augustus? He says, it's not to that caliber or that level of evidence and proof, but it's up there. I mean, it's just below that, maybe, that Paul.
Now, is this okay? So there's no real debate really on whether Paul. Now, what's okay? So Paul exists. Okay, yeah. Let's assume that for a second. But so does the issue is what he wrote accurate? Is that the?
Yeah. Well, so there are a number of issues. So one is which of the epistles that are attributed to Paul did he actually write? So that's one issue. And there are, like I said, there are some books in the Bible that are epistles from Paul that scholars agree these were actually written by Paul, and they base that on a number of different factors. But one of them is that they can kind of trace back the lineage to Paul, that the language in it is Pauline, and there's consistent use of some phrases and things like that. And a number of different things. Anyhow,
Can I ask a dumb question real quick? Because I'm consider this you teaching me stuff.
sure,
So,
yeah.
how is it? Why? Okay, Paul seems like a really odd name for some dude that was in a middle. It's not a Middle Eastern name, right? So, I mean, Paul is like the
Well, he
guy in my.
supposedly started out as Saul. He was Saul of Tarsus.
Okay, because Paul's like the guy in my HR department at work. Hey, Paul, you know what I mean? Like,
Well, yeah,
I,
it's become westernized. I mean,
Saul isn't even like Saul isn't that Italian?
well, it's kind of a Jewish name, right? There was even a
Oh, that's right.
King
Yeah.
Saul in the Bible. But all of this kind of comes. The reason that it's Western now is because the influence of Judaism and Christianity in Western culture.
You may be surprised, but I'm going to ask a series of dumb questions during this whole thing.
I, I don't, and I may not have answers. I mean, like even now, I've heard the arguments and the evidence put forward. I don't know it well enough. I don't have a mastery of this, and
I
it's not
understand.
a degree. So, but I can say, I have heard very compelling reasons that these things are Paul's letters. But there are, I think, as many as 6 epistles that are currently in the standard Orthodox Christian canon of the Bible. And the canon just means these are the books of the Bible that have been accepted by Western Christianity, and the church. But 6 of those epistles that are allegedly from Paul are known to be, now by scholars, they're known to be forgeries, or what they call pseudepigrapha in
Oh yeah,
academia.
I remember that because
Yeah.
a long time ago, I don't know if it was True Empiricism or Gene or one of those guys. They kept saying, or no, it was Nephilim, and it was all pseudepigrapha, pseudepigrapha, and I was like, and they kept mispronouncing it. And there's this great video, and like it was, but they get a boner for buzzwords every
Yeah.
6 months. Okay. I think
Yeah.
it's a boner for a lot of things, but anyway.
Yeah. So, anyways, so there are at least 6 epistles attributed to Paul in the New Testament that were not written by Paul, and this is very firmly held. There are a few that are, kind of in between the definite not Pauls and the definite Pauls that are maybe and maybe not, and there's some division about, among scholars about which of those other epistles are actually from Paul and are not.
And out of the ones that we know that Paul wrote, or we pretty sure that Paul wrote, what did he actually write?
Well, he wrote about salvation through grace and faith, rather than through works. So there's a letter that's supposedly from James, and I don't know if it's James, the brother of Jesus. I should know this, but I don't.
I think it is James. I remember laughing when I heard that. You're like,
Well, but there's a James who was a disciple that wasn't the brother of Jesus.
okay, maybe
Peter, James, and John were
it's like a folk band from the '70s,
right? Peter, Paul, and Mary.
It's like it's you gotta be. If assume for a second you are the brother of Jesus and your name is James, like
Yeah.
you got the short end of that fucking family stick. You know what I mean? Like, I'm my brother's God and I'm James. Like,
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that Ehrman says is that, we know Paul existed because, one, all of these people are writing in his name, and and they want to write in his name because he's somebody that they know. He's somebody that has authority, and they are forging his letters because his letters have had an impact in certain circles, and so they are trying to capitalize on the influence and authority that this person who historically existed had. And then 2, the letters that we know are written by Paul, he talks, this is evidence that Ehrman gives for believing that Jesus was a real person. Paul talks about interacting with Peter, who was like the best friend of Jesus. He was like the closest disciple, and the brother of Jesus named James. And so, Paul interacted and met and hung out with these guys. And presumably somebody that has a brother is somebody that really exists, and he was able to hear from these guys, even though Paul never met and never claimed to have met Jesus in the flesh when he was alive before he was crucified. He interacted.
Paul was the guy that said he talked to his brother. I know that was Paul.
Well, yeah, I mean, in one of his letters, and the book of Acts, gives a narrative of the life of Paul and his conversion story and things. So this is things that were kind of being passed around. Now, there's a lot of it that's myth and things, but to say that myths that were written this close to the actual events, just 40 or 50 years later, there's no reason to reject it all whole cloth, which is what Price wants to do. I mean, he wants to say that Price wants to say there's no reason to accept any of this. And he also dates the Gospels in like the 2nd century, and says that there's no reason to believe that they were written earlier than that. Well, that is way out of line with almost all scholarship on the subject right now.
Can I ask another dumb question?
Yeah.
You may be surprised, but I'm full of dumb questions.
No.
You shouldn't be. So, in the grand scheme of things, right? Does any of this really demonstrate Jesus' divinity? I mean, essentially, what you're saying is Paul's like, I met a dude whose name is James, and he's a brother of Jesus. Great. I mean, at best, it would demonstrate that Jesus was a real person, which was what Bart Ehrman's getting at, right?
Right. Yes. Exactly. Yeah. And Ehrman would say,
"Who cares? Who cares?"
Well, but I think that the debate is significant because there are a number of different atheists who are running around now promoting this idea of mythicism, and even like this mythicist in Milwaukee group, Mythicist Milwaukee, they're promoting this idea, and if it's a bad idea for all of the reasons Ehrman suggests, and most of the scholarship right now suggests that this is not credible, to say that Jesus was not a historical figure. It puts us in a bad light. It puts atheists in a bad light, because those arguments can be defeated, and those ideas are on shaky ground.
It looks like we're just hand waving anything away that would.
Right. Yeah. And it looks like we are biasing our position to for personal reasons, like that. It makes it more convenient if we can just hand wave it away and say there's nothing to historical about this in any way. Well, I mean, if that's not true, then why would we do that?
I mean, even at best, how do we know that Paul spoke to even if James was a real person, right? How do we know that James is actually Jesus' brother?
Well, I mean, you have other people that were. I mean, we don't know for sure, but we know that Paul thought that this was the case, and we know that Paul reports that there was this man Peter there. There are other early Christians who refer to these figures, and it seems like Paul's account just because he's talking about these people. Paul is a smart guy, based on the letters that we know. There's a form to them. There's um, he puts forward arguments. He bases them on things that are persuasive to people within that culture. So he's writing when he writes to Jews, he writes in a certain way. When he writes to Gentiles in the Roman culture, he writes in maybe a different way and things. And he's literate and able to communicate in a persuasive way to get his ideas across. And
But I mean, I don't know what the okay.
So my point is that he was intelligent, and it doesn't seem like he's the kind of guy that would completely make up things. He wasn't crazy.
Okay. Well, no, I'm not suggesting that
Yeah.
he was the whole hallucinating thing or whatever. I guess I'm just saying, like, in any other circumstance, if this was any other situation, um, as far as assuming the scholarship is correct, which generally consensus and all that hootenanny, at best you would get that these letters were written by Paul, but I don't understand how anyone can go any further with that as his claims can't be verified. Can they? I mean,
well, which claims?
Okay, so like for example, so when we're talking about him talking to Jesus' brother, right?
Yeah.
When he's talking to James, and you said there were other sources that sort of I don't know I don't know what words you use, but I don't want to say verified, but sort of mentioned. I mean,
sure.
Did anyone else mention James?
Yeah.
Or
yeah, I mean that there are church fathers and things from the first and second century that talk about some of these figures, Peter and James.
But even then, just because he said I talked to James doesn't mean he talked to James. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't get you there. It just, to me, it gets to a point where you go, okay, this guy named Paul, he wrote these letters. Some of them are forgeries. We think some of them maybes. We know we're pretty sure these ones are from him. He's a smart guy. He did all this stuff, but it doesn't really get you there. I don't understand how it gets you.
But why make that up? What would be his purpose? I mean, at some point you have to take some things, and there's nothing supernatural in the idea that there was a man living, and the man had a brother, and and Paul even says, well, Jesus was born of a woman, and and I met his brother and things. So Paul believes that Jesus was a human being, or at least whatever. Ehrman argues that Paul believes that Jesus existed before he was born of this woman, and that he was an angel, not that necessarily that he was the son of God. And
I don't know. I don't have a problem with any of the authenticity in that sense. I'm just saying, like, if I was taking this, if you take all the religion out of it, right?
Yeah.
And it was Billy Bob and Joe,
right?
And Billy Bob's like, yeah, I met Joe's brother, and we're like, well, did you really? I mean, he just wrote this. I mean, I know he wrote it. It's like, it doesn't really, just because. I mean, maybe he heard other people talk about James and he mentioned. I'm not saying that he didn't, and I'm not saying sometimes you don't just kind of, he doesn't, telling me he doesn't have a motivation to do it.
Sure.
Doesn't mean that he didn't have motivation. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm not saying he's wrong or he's lying. I'm just saying I get stopped right there where I just go, well, fuck, I don't know after that. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, well, and that's a different position than saying the likelihood, it's likely, the most likely scenario is that the whole story is a myth. I can accept your questioning and saying, well, I don't know that this is accurate. Okay, but to go from that and then say, and it's most likely that it was made up, I think that's the step too far.
Right. You can't, if you can't say one way or another what that he lied, or that's my point, is you don't know whatever his motivation was, if any. You know what I mean? You can't make that call. So if you can't make it for the positive, you can't make it for the negative. It's just me. I get to a point where, like I said, where I just stop and go, well, fuck, I don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
and I don't have a problem with Jesus being a historical figure or
yeah,
anything like that, or a single person, several people lumped into one
sure,
legend or whatever. Like
yeah, yeah,
I don't have a problem with him being a real person. So that's not the issue either. I don't give a shit. But
yeah.
um, the only time I give a shit about Jesus being a real person is his appearance, because he's not some like clean cut white dude with like long flowing hair. But Jesus does not look like one of the Bee Gees. Okay, so uh, but other than that, like, I don't care either way. But it just seems like a weird. I don't know what Robert Price is. How was his? How were the arguments back and forth? Were they rational? Were they sort of motion based?
Well, so I mean, to me, I don't think they were emotion based necessarily, but to me he makes that leap, that like I just said, where he goes from the point of saying, well, I don't take this to mean, X, that, that, let's say, we can take it for granted that Paul existed, or that, all of these things. And now he's going to say it's most likely that all of this was myth. And so he rejects huge portions of scholarship that are fairly well established, and are consensus. And he'll say, he even said in the debate, well, I don't give a rat's ass about consensus, or academic consensus in the scholarship and whatever.
Did he say rat's ass?
Well, something.
Oh.
Something like that,
Then I would go and watch it for sure.
Yeah, something. He may have said, like, I don't give a flying flip or whatever. I don't know what it was. He said something to that effect. He doesn't care at all about consensus. Well, there's a reason that this consensus is there, and if you're going to say, this is more likely, you've got to have a pretty solid thing. And I just pulled up his Wikipedia page, and I can't find even where he's got his PhD in systematic theology, and another PhD in New Testament New Testament, I guess just the New Testament, from Montclair State University. He is not like the top.
He has 2 PhDs though.
Yeah, but he's
no
not at the top of the academic world here for sure, in scholarship and things. And one of the things Ehrman did, which was kind of a cheap shot at the beginning of the debate, was he had the audience raise their hands if they were going to vote for Hillary, because this happened before the election, and raise their hands if they were going to vote for Trump, because he knew at the time that Price was a Trump supporter. And
really?
he did that totally to undercut Price's standing with the audience, which is a cheap trick, but at the same time, come on. There's I just think, listening to both of them, it seemed clear to me that like just the mastery of the texts, and the content of the subject matter, from a historical perspective, from a linguistic perspective. Ehrman had that hands down over Price, and called Price on a number of different points. I just, it seemed like Ehrman just, basically ran the field and ran circles around him, from an argument standpoint.
How do you think Richard Carrier would have done?
Yeah, see, I don't know, and that's one of the things I kind of wish, because I just don't think Price is as articulate, and I don't know, and I haven't, I'll be honest, I haven't read a lot of Richard Carrier's stuff, and I've kind of been somewhat hesitant to do it, in part because I don't want to I don't want to be persuaded in that direction because I think it's so hard. I think it's so hard to go there, and I don't think it's necessary with believers either. But yeah, and I'll admit that, I'm biased against this mythicist position, in part because I've been so persuaded by the, and it's not just Ehrman. I've heard there have been other biblical scholars and things that I've heard lay out the case for a historical Jesus that I just find it compelling. Like even looking at the narratives,
because you're biased.
well, yeah, but I mean, there's evidence. There's evidence that's compelling. Even the narratives in the gospel, like the birth narratives, that they are trying to put in there, just what do they call it? Narrative plot points to move Jesus from Nazareth, where he was, lived most of his life or whatever, and he was known as Jesus of Nazareth. But the prophecies of the Messiah say that he came from Bethlehem. Well, how do you get a guy from Nazareth to be from Bethlehem when everybody knows he's from Nazareth? Well, you concoct this plot device, that was the word I was looking for earlier, to move him to Bethlehem. And in the Gospel of Luke, the author of that gospel, concocts this story about a census that the Romans made everybody go to the town of their like historic origin or whatever. And so Joseph, who was of the line of David, has to move his whole family to Bethlehem, where Jesus is born. And that's Luke's solution. And there's no evidence that this happens at all. Yeah, totally ad hoc. So, and there are other things too, just that are workarounds that they do, because the actual character of Jesus makes it difficult to say that this guy fulfills various prophecies that were expected and looked for by the Jewish people. Well, we're going to do this and that. Matthew does other things to try and work things around. Well, he doesn't respect the Sabbath. Well, that's an awkward point for somebody that's supposed to be the Jewish Messiah, who is breaking the Sabbath. This is one of the fundamental laws in the Old Testament, and it's included in the Ten Commandments. And this guy is going to disregard them and go picking crops on the Sabbath day and working miracles. Well, they build in these things into the narrative to kind of excuse that, because it was known that Jesus did these things. Well, those are the kinds of things that you don't want to include in a story about a made up story about a Messiah figure, but they're there. So
that would have been funny if they would have killed Jesus because he was working on Sabbath.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you're saying is there are a lot of ad hoc explanations for this stuff.
Well, I'm saying that the authors in the Bible have ad hoc explanations for what seems like it was probably the behavior of a real person, and John the Baptist is another figure that Ehrman argues has significant evidence for. I think Josephus, who was a writer at the time, wrote about John the Baptist, and that that Jesus has this encounter with this figure who is a historical figure, is another point that Ehrman suggests is evidence that he was a real person.
I've like a lot of Christians will go, one of their go-tos for trying to prove that Jesus existed is the Josephus letter. I think I read it a while back, and it kind of mentions him, and I guess
What, Josephus?
Yeah, But did that happen? Like, didn't he write that like after Jesus died or something, or like?
Well, so what Josephus about Jesus is that was a group of people, claiming, or preaching about this figure, and they were called Christians. The scholarship now says that there were interpolations or additions, scribes that copied. You're breathing right on your microphone. I don't know if you can move that down or something. So,
I'm trying to be sexy.
Yeah, it's great. But anyways, the things that were written later were likely written by scribes copying Josephus and added, and then perpetuated as it went down history. But like the oldest copies that we have don't include these phrases, and they're things like, and Jesus was known to work miracles and was resurrected from the dead, and those kinds of things that Christians would want to have included in a contemporary and historic account. Well, that's not the kind of thing that Josephus wrote anywhere else about anyone else, and it also doesn't appear in the oldest manuscripts and those kinds of things. The writing style is different. All of those kinds of things that they use to say, well, this is not part of the original
text. Like somebody tried to crowbar in some stuff.
Right.
And like the language is all off at the time. It's all OMG. I totally saw this dude be raised from the dead. I'm like, wait a minute.
I'm not sure Abraham Lincoln wrote that.
Yeah, exactly. Shit. Well, look at that. I learned a lot today.
Well, that's good. Yeah, don't take it from me though. Go to the scholarship.
Oh, you're my Jesus.
No.
So I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say you feel that Ehrman won this debate, and that's because you probably agree with him to begin with. But even if you didn't, I think you would. It sounds like you're going that way.
Yeah. I mean, and you could argue and say, well, Price just wasn't a great representative. But and I don't know. I should look into it. And I will probably. I've got some credits on Audible, and I could get some of Richard Carrier's stuff. I'll probably go out and do that.
I can get you all his stuff if you want.
Yeah,
Barnes and Noble.
I'll give it a listen.
At the bookstore, guys. At the bookstore, I know what you're thinking.
Yeah. I'll give it a listen and see if I find it compelling and if it makes sense. And I'm not married to the idea that Jesus was a historical figure. I just everything that I've heard so far and the arguments that I have heard put forward on both sides, the historic figure seems like it's not reaching, and the mythicist position seems like it is reaching, and it also you have to throw out a lot of the kind of scholarship that exists.
But isn't it conceivable that the reason? No, I didn't even finish my sentence.
I'll just know where you're going.
Where am I going? Where am I going?
Go ahead and finish your sentence.
Okay. I know. I was saying, isn't it conceivable that? Okay, you said that from what you heard from both sides, right?
Yeah.
But isn't it conceivable that you have the current opinion that you do have, because the mythicist side you haven't really got into because, quote unquote, you're afraid to be persuaded, and so there is an inherent bias. I probably shouldn't have said that. You could be honest.
I'm not. Well,
this isn't the internet or anything. It's not recorded.
It's not that I'm afraid to be persuaded. I think that you have to really work at finding reasons to believe that Jesus was not a historical figure, and I think from everything that I've heard from the mythicist side, and I've listened to Carrier, like he's been a guest on a number of different shows and things like podcasts and whatever, and I've heard him talk. he's a smart guy. I think he's he's certainly done a lot of research and things. But I can't get there from anything that I've heard from him. And I think that if when you sit down and talk to Christians, let me say it this way: even if I became persuaded of the mythicist position, it is not something that I would push or try to convince a Christian that or even reveal necessarily that that's where I stood on the subject, because I think you at that point you lose credibility with somebody that you're talking to, because of the just the where things are at academically and scholastically in biblical scholarship and historical scholarship right now.
I kind of think that there are certain number of atheists, and this is just my guess, but I think they kind of have this idea in their head that if they acknowledge that Jesus was a real person, or more than likely a real person, that somehow gives the Christians a sort of, not a foothold, but you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
but you're not acknowledging the divinity of it. What you're
no,
saying is historically, and I think that's where stuff like science sort of prevails, is because I get news feeds every day, stuff like that, and science doesn't give a fuck. It does its thing, and they make their discoveries, and this and that, blah blah blah. And I think when, what's his name, William Lane Craig, or one of those guys,
sure.
when they talk about everything having a beginning, and that's what science shows, this and that, like science, you know what I mean? Because they have a misunderstanding of the Big Bang model or whatever, and but the people that do that, the scientists, they don't stop and go, well, this could be interpreted by Christians in this way, so we're just gonna, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
I think on the historical end, we shouldn't be doing that either. If that is the case,
True.
just go, hey, he was probably a real dude. We may not never know, but
Yeah,
that doesn't mean he was God or the Son of God or 1 in 3 or 3 in 1 or whatever the fuck
yeah,
Christians
right.
claim he is or whatever. Any of that fucking hocus pocus mumbo jumbo.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah,
anyway,
we don't have good reason to believe that he was a guy who actually walked on water, who actually turned water into wine, or
which would be awesome, but he'd be the hit of every party.
Yeah, and there are other figures that we know are historical figures who have miraculous claims around them, and Ehrman pointed this out. There's this Jewish guy who was the founder of Hasidic Judaism, from like I think he was in the 18th century. But and he is well known as a historical figure, and he wrote things and people wrote about him and whatever. But there are things that are kind of mythical, that miraculous claims about things that he did and whatever, and historians don't take those as serious claims. But they don't take that and say, well, the whole thing is fiction. You take things that are credible, and people saying they interacted with him and did this and that. Well, why throw out those things? Those things are, and we have this whole line of a religious tradition that kind of came as a result of things that he did and said and taught. So that, go ahead.
No, I'm saying, it's funny that how much of a hive mind people have. Have you ever heard of this guy Bikram, who created Bikram yoga?
No.
Okay, so you got to go online and watch the news footage of this guy or the interviews of this guy. So what Bikram, I'm not sure if you're familiar with yoga, but being on the West Coast, especially Los Angeles and Orange County, yoga is huge out here, like huge.
Sure.
And there are many different kinds, right? And I've actually tried it, and the one I tried was hard as fuck. Like I was dead. I was like on the floor going, ah. But what Bikram yoga is yoga done in a 105-degree room, and so you're
Sure.
sweating and you're holding position and stuff, and you're just like dripping fucking the fat just fucking melts off you, right? You get shredded.
Yeah, yeah.
However, the guy that created it, Bikram, he's a fucking psychotic madman, and so there's this news footage on him where all these people are coming out, all these women are saying that he made them give them hand jobs and shit like that, blah blah blah. But he has all these weird claims, kind of like Kim Jong Il did, where he was like, I don't eat and I don't drink and I don't sleep and I da 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 and this and that, and there are all these women coming out saying, hey, dude, he kind of sexually violated us and he's this crazy person. But there's a whole group of people that just buy into it because it's not quote unquote like religion, but it's spiritual,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's all kind of the same shit. But it's like there's people now that will believe, like they got
Right.
fucking smartphones and computers, and they're like, yeah, that guy doesn't need to eat or drink. Why? Because I've never actually seen him eat or drink. So, and he claims that he doesn't. Seems legit. But one of the claims that Kim Jong Il did was it Il the dad.
Yes,
They
Kim Jong
I'm not
Il.
yeah, I'm not sure if you remember all the crazy shit that they claim he did, but like he golfed a perfect 18 holes, like 18 hole in ones. I don't know if you remember that one. He he never defecates. That was another one. That's another good one.
Right.
And all this weird stuff, and that's essentially propaganda. But I'm sure there's people that believe that.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
Well, even I mean, the similar thing about his son now. If you watch the movie The Interview, they even talk about it in there. The guy is in a cab with somebody that's taking him to meet Kim Jong Un, and he asks this person. She's like the PR director for the North Korean leader or whatever.
Yeah.
And she says,
Oh, she's hot.
She says. He says, "Oh, he has a no butthole.
Oh yeah.
He has no need." Yeah. So crazy stuff about living people that that gets put out there and propagated in public.
Right. Speaking of
So,
which, are you ready to move on to current events?
sure, yeah.
I wish I had sound effects that was like current events, like a fucking news network or something. But so these are a few things that I found online which I thought were fucking weird but hilarious nonetheless. And you may or may not have seen these. So I'm gonna frame up here, but like my fucking TV. My TV is being stupid, folks. There we go. Yeah. Wait, let me white box me. White box. So racist. Nope, wrong one. Yep, this one. So, this dude brought a level on a plane to prove that the Earth was flat.
Yes,
And
I saw somebody posted about that.
Yes, and apparently he went from I think North Carolina to Seattle. And the early articles that I read were that he did this so he can prove that the Earth is flat. But maybe he had a cousin that lives in Seattle. I don't know. But from a person that doesn't understand, I mean, I first thought of this. I go, look, dude, I don't know how fucking levels would work in a plane. There's got to be some fucking science involved here. I'm just not going to assume that the dude is correct. So when you read this, what was your first? Did you get to read the whole article?
No, I only saw like a photo. Yeah, I think that's the photo I saw, or what? Yeah, with the level and the phone.
Right. So here's the funny part, and it made sense now that I read a little bit on it. But gravity is perpendicular to the surface of the Earth or whatever, right? So where as long as the plane follows the curvature of the Earth, the level should be level. So he's actually demonstrating that the Earth is round or spherical. You know what I mean?
Well, the planes make corrections, and they will there's
have
some
that.
variation, but yeah, you can't
They have someone actually.
level just like you can't you have a kitchen table that would be level, right? Doesn't mean that the Earth is flat. That's not proof. And you could put on a hill. The level would be showing that it's not level as the plane is taking off. And
Yeah, that's what somebody wrote.
yeah,
The, the,
it's
my favorite line from this guy on Twitter, he puts, "You think he would have looked out the window at the curve of the horizon at least one time?"
yeah. I've heard that you can't that planes don't generally go high enough to see the curvature. I and I've been on planes where the windows kind of have a
Like a
curve,
concave kind
yeah,
of.
concave thing going on, so it's hard to see. And if you look at it one way, it kind of looks like it's convex, and if you look at it a different way, it's flat and then concave and whatever. So it's
This
yeah.
guy, this guy has a good explanation, and I believe him because he's Asian. By the way, that means he's smart and knows maths. People. So he says, D. Marble falsely assumes that gravity is always directed in one unchanging direction relative to the plane's flight path. In reality, gravity is always perpendicular, more or less, to the Earth's surface. So as the surface of the Earth curves, gravity would continue to be perpendicular to the surface, directed radially inwards toward the center of the sphere. At cruising altitude, as the plane traces the curvature of the Earth's surface to stay level, gravity will continue to be perpendicular to the plane and to the Earth's surface. The bubble on the spirit level will only shift off-center whenever the direction of gravity is no longer perpendicular to the plane, such as during takeoff and landing. Final thought, using the spirit level does not really prove whether the Earth is flat or round because gravity will always be directed perpendicular to the Earth's surface, and as long as the plane tries to stay level with the Earth's surface during flight, the bubble will stay centered. Makes complete fucking sense to me. And then this guy goes, yep, it's flat. And where'd the oceans go? It's just people are just fucking retarded. You're fucking retarded. I don't understand. I don't get it. Do you deal with flat earthers at all, Gabby?
I've been in a hangout with them a couple of times. And my go-to point is just distances. Where's your map that actually shows? And because they'll show that UN kind of map that's flat with the Arctic Circle around the outer perimeter. The Antarctic.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and the North Pole is at the center of the circle, right? Well, how much distance is there between different points in the southern hemisphere, and how long would it take for a plane? We have international flights, we have international travel between those different points, and the difference between the travel time and distance on the spherical Earth maps versus the flat Earth maps is completely different, and would be grossly different in time to travel, unless you think that planes in the northern hemisphere travel very slow, and for some reason planes in the southern hemisphere are traveling at a much faster rate or something like that, or ships or whatever.
Well, I know people I know someone that's going to New Zealand and Australia. So what is the path of the plane? Are they saying it goes across the U.S., across the Atlantic, through the, over Asia or Africa, Asia?
Yeah.
Like the long way? Or they're not going to go around the Pacific, you know what I mean? Because it's flat, they can't do that?
Yeah. I mean, from Australia to New Zealand, I think either map, but
No. I mean, but they're coming from America to New Zealand.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They're going from. So, are they saying they're taking the long way?
They don't know. They don't talk about those things. I'll say this. The people that I've been in hangouts with have been like Pillbox.
Oh.
And I don't know, maybe Arcane Logos.
Oh.
I don't know.
There's two fucking think tanks.
Yeah, right. So they'll shut you up. They'll mute you and kick you before you even get to press them on questions like that. And they'll say things like, oh, so because I don't know how long it would take to travel from point A to point B, that means that a spinning ball is the best answer or whatever. It's
Huh?
all of these reductio ad
That's
absurdum
a complete non sequitur, by the way.
caricatures. Yeah,
Well, let me ask, okay. Let me ask another question. So they show this atlas, right? The UN atlas, basically, blah, blah, blah. But how do they know that's the map? How do they know, like, because they're assuming, right, that the
yeah,
United States, North America, South America are on the left, essentially, of this map, right, and Asia's on the right, right, like how we would normally view like a flat map. But how do
yeah.
we know that's the case? Because if it's flat, isn't there a possibility that Africa and you know what I mean, like how are they so sure that that's the setup? And,
Jesus,
and then and then what's on the other side of the disc? Like if the Earth is flat, what's on the other side?
it's
Like,
turtles all the way down.
you know what I mean? Like none of this
Yeah,
fucking makes any sense. And they think they're sitting there and they're all fucking proud of themselves and they're like,
yeah.
yeah, dude, like we got all the answers. I'm like, you ain't got shit. You brought a fucking level on a plane. This guy's a moron. There's more. Why do I learn? It's like these guys. There was not too long ago. There was a radio show or something where they had like these athletes on or whatever,
Uh-huh.
and somebody had mentioned that the Earth was flat, and the other guys didn't know kind of what to say, but they don't want to seem like they're quote unquote closed minded or whatever. So they're like, "Yeah, man, anything's possible, man. Like anything's possible." No, motherfucker, anything is not possible. Like,
Mhm.
it's like it blows my mind that
Yeah,
I'm seeing this in the 20th century. But
yeah.
anyway,
I heard one person say, when they were asked, well, how does gravity work, and why are we stuck to the ground, and their answer was that the flat Earth is moving upward, and even if it was moving at a constant speed, we would still be able to like push off of it because we would have the same speed as the Earth, but it's got to be accelerating. So that's what they say is it's accelerating infinitely upward,
what?
which keeps us down on the ground.
Where are we accelerating to? Like what? Like where are we going? Are we just flying across the universe?
Yeah, I guess, and
And
everything in the universe is
we're,
going with us too, right?
yeah,
So,
that's my next question. Like, how is
yeah.
every? So how are the planets on their on the solar system? How are they going? What the? This makes my brain hurt so
That's
much.
that's the kind of ridiculous stuff that you have to even just to get to gravity. Like, how does that? What,
Right.
what is the force that is moving us in that constant accelerated
Holy
thing?
shit. Okay. All right, I'm gonna move on from this guy. He's gonna give me a fucking aneurysm. This is my next favorite story, I think.
Oh yeah, I saw that guy too.
The baby goat born with one eye in India has now been hailed a miracle and is now beginning to be worshipped by villagers.
I didn't see that.
Yes. It's now well, it was the news reports that I got on this was it was born, it was this freak thing, whatever, like
Yeah.
like you see like the snake with two heads and like
Right.
um and now this came out I think a day or two ago where some villagers believe the goat is sacred and begun to worship it after it was born a week ago. Vets predicted that the goat, which also only has one ear, would die within a few days, but it has defied the odds so far. People have been visiting the village to see the kid, which suffers from a condition seen in other animals, including horses, pigs, cows, and cats. The condition which causes the defect is called cyclopia and occurs when the two hemispheres of the brain do not separate. So there isn't really an explanation in these articles on why it's being worshipped. It might be something from God that the baby goat was born in our house. Also believes the birth of this kid will bring luck to his home, but simply because the doctors go, this thing's probably going to die in a few days, and it didn't die, somehow means it's a miracle.
It must be a god.
Because a miracle to me means on some level that like it just defies the laws of nature completely. Oop.
Uh,
And so so it's like I don't understand that. It reminds me of that of the a few years ago where the tree was like supposedly crying in front of that church, and it was like really those tree bugs that were shitting on people. And even after the botanist got there and told them that it was tree bugs shitting on them, they were just like, no, we don't believe you. And then we don't. And we, like, we don't care. The tree is a fucking miracle, you know. And oh wait, where did my fucking there you go. Where did my goat picture go? And the fact that something defies the odds does. I mean, there are people that have like these lung conditions or born with these weird abnormalities, and they get 6 months to live. They live like a few years or something, and
right.
it's a miracle. No, a miracle would be if you woke up the next day and it had two eyes. You know what I mean? And it was like a normal goat. Like that's the miracle. Having a physical abnormality doesn't make things a miracle. So it's weird to me that people, maybe they tie things that don't need to be tied together. Like what was I gonna say? Hold on a second. So what really reminds me of is this guy. He said to me a long time ago. He goes, my dad. He found an owl feather that fell out of the sky as a bird flew over it or something, and he took it and put it in his cap because he felt it was good luck. And he goes, oh, it's good luck, right? Because an owl flew over and blah, blah, blah. And I go, why is that good luck? And he goes, well, because, why did the feather fall on his head kind of thing? And I'm like, what?
What? Why did this thumbtack penetrate my foot?
Right.
If it's not good luck.
Right. It didn't make any sense to me at all. And so, just stuff like that. Like people, how they equate things is like just fucking crazy. So anyway, so there's that. That happened. And probably, I think the biggest news of this week was, not that I want to get into this clown, but
yeah, there he goes. He's got a prize.
This just says it all to me. So there are a couple things that going on here.
I don't know that they should call that bowing necessarily. He was stooping down to get the little thing amulet.
I don't think that's the issue. Was that when Obama did sort of like the polite like shake the shake hand and bow thing, like I think it was more on the lines of the $120 billion or whatever like deal that went down with Saudi Arabia. But I don't know, this guy's a fucking moron, so I don't know. Either way, that guy's a moron. But I other than me being just disgusted that this whole thing even happened, I don't have much to say about that. But anyway, well,
you want to update on my communications with believers?
Who?
Mr.
Person?
D, letters with Mr. D, and also with the temp guy.
Yes, temp guy. So let's get to temp guy first, because I actually read the email that you sent me. Obviously, that I responded to it. So for those of you who don't know, there's a temp person that was working with Gabby at his place of employment, and this person ended up being a crazy person. And yeah.
So we had been going back and forth for a while, and then things kind of dropped off because, like, just before Easter, he got really mad at me, and he had blocked me on Facebook and whatever, and we we kind of stopped communication. Well, after Easter, like Easter Sunday, he wrote me and apologized and um,
So
said that he unblocked me at that time. And
but he got upset at you because you asked him a question.
well, yeah, I mean, he got upset. He's gotten upset at me for for a variety of reasons, but almost all of my interactions with him are asking him questions, asking him to, you know, validate things that he has said and provide for claims that he has made,
Right,
which
and then
upsets him.
right. So when you begin, they're not even like trap or gotcha questions. They were just like clarification questions for the most part. And he literally flies off the fucking handle.
Yeah.
Like all caps, how dare you? All you want to do is argue with me and this and that. You're blocked. I'm done. And then you're like, yeah, but you keep responding. So if you keep responding, I'm going to keep responding. Like, I'm done normally means I'm going to stop responding. And then he's like, you know, I'm out of here and this and that. And, you know.
Yeah, so we started back up. I sent him this video with the street epistemology guy, Anthony Magnamosco. If you guys are familiar with him, look him up or just Google or do a search on YouTube for street epistemology, and his videos will come up. But he has this approach where he talks with people, just random strangers in public, and says, hey, would you have a few minutes for an interview, and gives them a very brief explanation of, you know, I talk to people about something they believe strongly in, and then just ask them how it is that they came to their belief and how confident they are. Well, you know, that's the approach. And this was, you know, kind of an approach to talking people out of faith, that was developed by and advanced first by Peter Boghossian, who is a philosophy professor in I think it's Oregon State University, but I don't know for sure. Portland, anyways. But but Anthony Magnamosco has kind of put out a whole bunch of videos, you know, recording his attempts at you know, having these conversations. I sent one of these to this temp guy and said, "What, you know, I'm curious to see what you think about this." And his response was he attempted to watch it, but, you know, thought that it was terrible. And he says that he says the guy just wants to argue and put down Christianity and confuse people. I do not agree that people believe as they do because of their rearing, which isn't something that Anthony Magnamosco even says. It's something that the specific girl in the particular conversation in the video that I sent him says of herself, you know, and that, you know, she acknowledges that other people might think that as well. And then he says, if I could get the guy off YouTube, I would do so. So that was the thing that really kind of struck a chord with me. And I said, you want to restrict free speech on the internet? And he says anything anti-Christian is a type of hate speech and shouldn't be allowed. And so
yes,
yeah,
he was saying something like you should lose your liberties because you're not a believer or something, or you're an atheist, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I asked him if he thought people should be kicked out of the country if they're non-believers, and he said no, because they can't perform their Christian duties without non-believers. And he says, there are people living in the United States that forfeit certain rights by religious views and lifestyle they have chosen. One, criminals. They lose the right to voting, right to bear arms. This group, as Christians, we as Christians can work with. I don't know what he's talking about here. Then he says, number two, LGBTQ or BTQ community, they lose the rights to voting, free speech, the right to bear arms. Oh my God.
Yeah, he's crazy. Like he was saying, you didn't read that?
No, I know.
Oh.
Just, you know, what is he talking about? And then he says, this group we as Christians can work with. What? And then atheists lose the right to free speech, right to bear arms, voting, certain employment opportunities. He throws in there as well. This group puts a black eye on the United States and have turned on their families, friends, and country with betrayal and possible treason.
Yes. Oh yeah. He said like we're. Yeah, dude, that dude's nuts.
So I said, wow, it sounds like you were opposed to the Constitution. Should atheists be imprisoned for asking religious believers questions about their beliefs? No, I'm all for the Constitution, is his response. That is why I take the stand that I do. Atheists forfeit their rights, and they reject our Judeo-Christian values and structure. He says, I don't consider you an atheist. I consider you a confused Pentecostal.
What?
I didn't see that before because there were some of these, the first part that I read there was from one email and the second one was from a second email. And so some of these I was composing an email when he sent his second one in. So I think I missed that.
You confused Pentecostal, you.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's better that he thinks of you that way because
maybe
if he thinks of you as an evil atheist, like he may actually fucking try to blow you up or something.
I don't know. So I said, you realize the Constitution forbids what you were talking about, right? Freedom of expression, freedom of religion, which includes the right not to worship or participate in religious rituals, etc. Were among the first rights established. And there is no mention of the Christian God, Christian Bible, or limitations on certain people in the Constitution. Oh, and he absolutely he loathes the fact that I use a lowercase g and when I talk about Christian God. And I do that intentionally, not to offend him, but because I don't think that the Christian God should be, given this capital G as if the whole category belongs to their claim, right? And I think that's giving them more credit and esteem than their beliefs warrant, and culturally we have kind of gone along with that. To me, that's I don't do it, and he has like chewed me out for that.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the link that you sent me, but I don't know. I can't see it. I'm like, because fucking Google's cool.
What link?
You gave me the link to the conversation.
Oh, well, I just sent you I forwarded you the email, right?
Oh,
so
that's what it was.
Google Mail, Gmail. But anyhow, and then he says wrong.
Because I really want
to guy exclamation point. Oh, and he responds to my use of the lowercase g by putting a lowercase on my name anytime he writes my name, which I find hilarious. I've told him, I said, it's pretty juvenile of you, and that God is not the name of your God. Your God's name is Yahweh or Jesus or, Holy Spirit or whatever. And if I'm writing about Yahweh or Jesus, I use the capital letters because it's a proper name. God is a category like sheep or horse or something like that. And your claim about this God is one of thousands of claims throughout history, whatever. I had this conversation with him in a previous thread, but he is appalled that I do not respect his desire for me to use capitalization when I refer to his deity. Anyway,
he's not the first person, because I was in a Google argument with, that was me and Cliff Jumper versus some other crazy dude.
Yeah.
And he was the same way.
Yeah.
He's like, don't you use a little g, and just going bonkers, dude. And
yeah.
Like, chill the fuck
That's
out.
For idols. That's for idols.
Yeah. He was. Yeah. I can't fucking find this.
So we have. Oh, he's responding. He says, wrong. We have the right as Christians to worship freely. I don't know why he capitalizes worship, and not to have a state church. That means that's what that means, and the liberals have distorted that in the past 75 years. I'm sorry, but you are dead wrong with three exclamation points, and I'll fight you over that.
Oh yeah. Dude, I'm really trying to find. I'm not seeing it in my.
I don't know. Maybe you deleted it.
No, fucking no way, dude. Are you kidding me?
I said, well, make your case from the actual text of the Constitution. Where do you get those ideas from within the Constitution itself? And he says, separation of church and state! Exclamation point. Dude, you argue with a brick wall with like 4 exclamation points. And so, as he's furthermore, I know my history with a capital H, and you will never change my mind. All caps, never. Exclamation point. All you want to do is argue, 3 exclamation points. I'm done, dude. I said, tent guy, I am not arguing. I am asking you to explain and bring evidence to support your claims. You say you would fight me about this subject. I don't know if you mean that literally physically assault me if I disagree with you, or if you are speaking metaphorically, but it doesn't seem like when you are unable to bring reasons to the table, you turn to personal attacks and try to stop the discussion. Anyways, I firmly support the idea of a separation of church and state. You seem to be suggesting that Christianity is the state religion, and that anyone who disagrees ought to lose their liberty. We clearly have different ideas about what the separation of church and state means. Also, the phrase separation of church and state doesn't exist in the Constitution. The Establishment Clause in the First Amendment simply says Congress is prohibited from establishing a state religion. Article 6 of the Constitution also has a clause specifically prohibiting religious tests from being codified for holding an office, a political office. And that is the basis for the Supreme Court decisions against the state laws that tried to prohibit atheists from holding public office. How do you understand the separation of church and state? He says, I'm done, dude. And
that's my favorite.
Yeah. And then I've said again, something about criticize people believe how they're raised, and you suggest that I only believe what I believe because I was taught wrong. He's done that a lot of times. He has said that because I was born in the Midwest, that I don't know how to be respectful, and I ask questions all the time, or because I was Pentecostal.
You were the wrong type of Christian.
Yeah. All of these things. I wasn't raised in the South. He says, Gavagai, you need psychological help. Your mind has been warped. As I stated, I am done. You're blowing up my phone. I only responded 1 email per any email that he sent to me. So blowing up his phone was only happening as much as he was responding. And at this point, I got a little bit snarky, and I, in some ways, regret it, but it was also somewhat satisfying to to shoot back a little bit of his venom in a joking manner back at him. I said, LOL, I'm not the one who keeps responding after he said he's done and using all caps and multiple exclamation points. But you think I'm in need of psychological help? You said my mind is warped, but you are telling me that my rights ought to be restricted because I ask people questions and ask you to explain why you believe the things you believe. If you are done, then be done. If you respond, I will respond. It is on you. Cheers. That wasn't particularly snarky, but and he says, when someone says they are done, you don't respond. You really need help. I said, when someone says they are done, I thought the done person doesn't respond. Now you're just being silly. He has a little tagline that he has. It says, "Play like a champion today," and his signature line. Yeah. And I responded, "Be done like a champion today." And at this point, he just goes off the deep end. He's all caps his whole message, and it's like 1 word per line. You need some help with a Mid-South attitude adjustment. You would never, ever make it living in the Deep South. You are in need of an Arkansas butt whooping.
What?
Oh,
Like it's a badge of honor. Like, why would I want to make it in the Deep South?
well, whatever. Yeah. So I said, are you actually threatening violence because you don't have the ability to provide reasons for the things you believe? I said, go to your pastor with our email thread and see what he says. I assume you would be going to church. You would be going to church tonight. This was on a Wednesday night. If you want to hurt, I will be playing pickleball at such a place. And I told him where I was playing. Better you can come and play pickleball with me. It would do you good. Some of that aggression out of your system exercise. Um, and this is the point where I forwarded the email to you. And then after that, he says, believe me, my purpose of our messaging. Now I am following his advice. Please walk away from me. All you seem to want to do is argue. You're not a seeker, and I can't have a real and positive conversation with me. I wonder who he can have a real and positive conversation with.
People that agree with him.
Yeah, people that agree with him, or people who don't challenge or ask questions.
Well, the funny thing about this was that's when I asked the question. I was like, do you really think that he went to his pastor first of all? But even if he did, do you think he actually goes, here's the transcript of our conversation?
Yeah, no, I don't think he probably did that. I think he probably did go to the pastor.
But I'm sure his portrayal of you isn't exactly, accurate. Where it's like, there's this guy who's trying to convince me not to love God or something like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. He keep on argue with me, and the guy's like, just walk away, dude. Like,
yeah. Well, and that's my favorite part of the whole thing here is now I'm going to take my pastor's advice, and then he tells me to walk away. So, like, what was his pastor's advice? To tell him to walk away, or for Temp Guy to take action and walk away. There was nothing. I wasn't like hunting him down. I wasn't following him around. It's an email, and he kept responding. So I would respond. If he doesn't want to respond, I wasn't sending multiple communications after that.
You were blowing him up, clearly.
Yeah. One email for every, and sometimes one email for 2 emails that he sent me. So, he was the one sending more messages.
That's because he formulates his emails in like caps.
Yeah.
And like he gets like one sentence out at a time because he's yelling at you.
Yeah, but I called the church, and I actually am hoping to.
You called seriously? You called the church?
Yep. Yeah. I pass it every day on the way to and from work, and so I'm hoping to get at least a phone conversation with the pastor. And I left a message there. It was Friday, and I said, I've been in conversation with one of the church parishioners there, and I'm curious to find out if this individual's beliefs are something that the church advocates, or if he's this is not something that the church advocates, but people in any group, there are going to be people that deviate from something that's advocated in general by the institution or group at large. So I'm just curious to find out. Well, I got a call back from the secretary who picked up the message, and she says, well, this is like the pastor's off day because he's getting ready for the weekend when he's got events and church and whatever.
He's got a domino game to set up.
Yeah. So, but she said he would try and get back with me next week, and whatever. So we'll see how that goes. I'm very.
Your job is to try to get him to come on Google Hangout. Hi, Pastor Bob. When's the last time you masturbated? Click. Damn it.
That would be a wasted opportunity.
I know. You would have to go, heathen, be on your best behavior.
Right.
I just would like to, the only questions I would really have, which I'm sure that would be the same questions you have, maybe not, but I would just say, you know, the first question would be, do you advocate, like kind of what you said,
Yeah.
um, and I would be curious to know how you were portrayed. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And do you are as far as the threats of violence, are is that something that because you have the
Right.
transcript,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not like you can't show it to me, if you wanted to, but
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah. Well, I fully intend to, if not bring it with me, at least,
oh, you're gonna go there in person?
well, so I don't know. I'll wait to see if I can. I would love to have a sit down with him, and I'll bring
Oh,
my laptop and open up my email and say, look, here it is. If not that, I would go by phone and set a meeting where I could pull it up and actually read to him. And if he wanted me, I'd forward it to him. To say, this is actually what was said. Here it is. So, because
yeah.
I think if nothing else, I'm doubtful that the pastor would advocate a lot of the things that Temp Guy has said. Um, I know that the church is like very like anti-abortion, and they do a lot of promotion of like pro-life stuff, and probably do a lot of, well, advocacy, maybe for politicians. I don't know how far they go in that direction, but I know that they are so pro life and anti-abortion that it comes up frequently, and that they are politically active as far as advancing like the, what do they call it, the life chain protest and stuff
Okay.
like that.
Oh, so they're fucking crazy people too, but it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that they would advocate violence.
Yeah,
But
I mean, my home church in Wisconsin was very pro-life, and there were people that advocated for the anti-abortion protests and those kinds of things. And I participated in a life chain demonstration thing. I held a sign that said "abortion is murder" when I was a teenager. Um,
I'd
yeah,
love to see those pictures.
I don't know that there were pictures, but I was there. Um, and it's just we nobody at my church that I know of would have said that non-believers didn't have constitutional rights,
It
or
would be it would be great if you walk into his office with your laptop and you're like, "Hey, I had this conversation. I had some concerns and that." And the guy goes, "Huh, let me see the email." So you pull up the emails and stuff, and he goes, "You know what? You need an Arkansas ass whooping." Just like he's totally on board with the whole secretary locks the door behind you.
I'll come on camera if that happens and show my black eyes.
throw the cam on real quick. Yeah. Oh man, I thought I would. I think I would not survive or do well in the deep south either, but probably for a different reason.
Yeah.
Oh come on, what's a good race joke this like early in the afternoon? But
Is that what that was?
that was it. Yes.
Okay.
It's a gross generalization of people from the South that are racist. Duh. That's how we view everyone. And if you're on the East Coast or the West Coast, that's how we view everybody in the South.
Oh.
Like, we're in cousin fucker Tennessee. Let's go to church.
So, do you want to hear the last communication I had with Mr. D?
Yeah. And then we can wrap up. I got coming over.
And there was not a reply to this message, but his previous message, just to catch people up, and Mr. D, by the way, is a family friend for anybody that hasn't heard any of this. And
very involved with Gaba Guy's personal life and his friends and family.
Yeah. Well, he had kids in the youth group with me and Turtle, and his when our mom passed away a couple of years ago, their family even like hosted an after funeral service.
Oh man,
thing at their house.
And he must have broke this guy's heart.
Well, I don't know that it broke his heart. He's known that, you know, we didn't believe for a long time or whatever. But
Okay.
the reason I started up this conversation with him was because my dad didn't want to talk about religion with me anymore, but recommended that I talk with Mr. D because he thought Mr. D could articulate things better and was more well read or whatever. And so, but you know, we were talking, the subject that we kind of focused on or honed in on was morality. And and at this point in the conversation, he said, I'm skipping some of this stuff, but it is clear you do not believe the construction of an ethical system requires a belief in God. Inasmuch as I'm not using the moral intuitions that many people share as an argument for the existence of God, I'm not disturbed by your position. It should be noted, however, that your disagreement is with fellow atheists like Sartre and Camus. I will be anxious to hear your response to them and an explanation of your basis for making moral decisions. So
that's so cheesy.
Yeah.
It's like you have to argue with your fellow atheists because they disagree with you, so therefore you guys are in contradiction.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what, Mr. D. You talk with Temp Guy who thinks you're a Pentecostal lunatic.
Right. You're talking about Christianity.
Yeah.
You motherfuckers don't agree with each other at all. You know what I mean? It's like,
well, they agree on a lot of stuff, but you know, it's the baptism in the Holy Spirit. I'm using air quotes around that, and speaking in tongues and you know, those kinds of things, miracles. Even I don't think Temp Guy really even believes in miracles. He certainly doesn't believe in that prayer gets answered in ways, or at least not from the things that he's told me. Or you know, I don't know. He has repeatedly told me that my understanding of what the Bible says when Jesus says, "Pray in my name, and I will give you the things that you've asked for," and where two or more believers are gathered in my name, I will do what they've asked. You know, all of these things, and another one was Jesus says, you know, of all of these things, referring to his miracles that I've done, the believers who come after me will do even greater things when they do them in my name. Well, no, those things aren't saying what it seems like they're saying is what Temp Guy's position is. But anyways, I've digressed here. So I replied, and this was my last communication with Mr. D. I said, "Good morning, Mr. D. The first thing I would like to say is that I just disagree with Camus and Sartre. There are atheists who agree with them, but I think there are more atheists, certainly in the modern era, and I think Camus and Sartre are both deceased, who disagree with them on the issue of morality. I think they are wrong. There are theists who also agree that morality must necessarily be grounded in something other than the commands of a god. I'm not familiar with the specific arguments used by Camus and Sartre, but that put forward in support of their conclusions about meta-ethics. But if you want to take the time to articulate their reasoning and not simply their conclusion, I will happily be happy to look at it and consider the possibility that I've missed something. So I hate it when somebody says, well, this guy says X, you know, argue with that. Well, that's not an argument. I think it's
unless
wrong.
they agree with him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I mean,
It's not fair.
Well, no, it's first of all, it's intellectually dishonest way of debating, because you're not debating that person,
Right.
So to simply say, oh, well, you know, this other prominent, you know, atheist says this, so you know, so the fuck what? You know what I mean? So
yeah, and I go on. I say, well, I don't see how a god could possibly be a foundation for morality any more than a god could be a foundation for grounding logic or mathematics. The small hint of Sartre's thinking included in the quote you provided seems unintelligible to me. And he's what Sartre says in the quote. Let me go back and look for the quote. I don't see it. Something to the effect that that the you have to have something infinite to ground the finite, and so if morality is infinite, then without a God, it can't be. You can't have the finite morality, which it doesn't make any sense to me at all. Maybe I'm distorting it, but that seems to be the gist of it.
I think people there's a I think there's just a misuse, not misuse necessarily, but maybe an unintentional equivocation when it comes to words like infinite and finite in this, just like kind of nothing. You know what I mean? Like it means, a
Yeah,
philosophical nothing means different than when a physicist or uses it. Um,
yeah.
so
But I responded. I said, "Well, my dog night. Does that mean that there must be an infinite dog for my dog to exist? How about a speck of dust? It even mean that a finite must have an infinite?" It reminds me of Deepak Chopra quote. Someone created a quote generator thing, and I told them about that and blah blah blah. And to basically give them the idea of this sounds like a deepity to me. So it's a bit odd for you to ask me to account for why there are atheists who think differently than I do. There are many theists who hold positions and beliefs that are different from yours. To me, the fact that there are believers who are allegedly aligned with the same God, who claim to be in a relationship with the same God, who communicates to them through a perfect text that is supposed to be clear and not to cause confusion. The fact that there are thousands of denominations and religions is more surprising by far than the fact that there are non-believers who are independently striving to discover what is true in a complex world, have varied opinions on a number of important subjects. I will do my best to articulate the answers and reasons for the conclusions I have reached. I hope you will not hold me accountable for explaining why other atheists believe differently. I will likewise defer from asking you to account for the differences among opinions of other theists and even Christian theists. And I debated because, like, for example, this is one of the things that I would was tempted to kind of draw upon. Well, can you explain why there are writings from C.S. Lewis, who is held in esteem among many Christians, and I believe that Mr. D has even referenced C.S. Lewis in some of his.
I don't understand why that is. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. But
why? Well, he's a good writer. He was an English
wrote the Narnia
professor.
books. Who cares? But I mean, like, is he?
Well, no, he wrote a lot more than that. He wrote
he
a lot
did?
of theological. Yeah, he wrote
I know nothing about that guy.
a book called the Problem of Pain, which is what do they call that? I mean, it's addressing the problem of evil. But anyways, it's and a book called Mere Christianity, which is kind of a theological explanation of essential Christian doctrines and teachings and things, and a number of kind of theological books, and some that are kind of go down the path of apologetics. Surprised by Joy is his own personal account of how he became Christian, and he was an atheist, before he was a Christian. So, and
Wow.
he's one who I actually believe was an atheist for a number of years, but converted after. There are some of these apologists who are out there, claiming to have been converted atheists who. I don't necessarily believe they were actually atheists. What's his name? The author of The Case for Christ and Case for Faith and whatever. That guy. Lee Strobel is his name. He makes that claim. I don't buy it that he was ever an atheist. But anyways,
yeah.
So I've responded to something else that he says there. I kind of go into an account of ethics, and I draw from John Rawls, and I know Mr. D is one of the few Christians that I know who actually has read Rawls and was, respected Rawls. And I also said, there are criticisms for these attempts at an account for morality that I've laid out, and I'm aware that this is not bulletproof account of morality. It's a difficult subject, but from those secular moral principles, you can derive ideas like fundamental human rights, democracy. Things like slavery and oppression of minorities and women are not permitted by these principles. I said the whole reason I chose morality as the starting point for the discussion is because it was my pursuit of a consistent concept of morality and justice contained in the Bible that ultimately led me to question and doubt the divine nature of the Bible and later the existence of any kind of God. How do you square love your neighbor as yourself with chapters like Exodus 21 or Leviticus 25, which talk about how to enslave people, that you can beat them? And I said, there's no Old Testament law that prohibits slave owners from using their unwed female slaves as personal sex toys. For that matter, prostitution is also permitted by the Old Testament law. Samson sleeps with a prostitute. You can tell I wrote this after we did our Samson episode. In a Philistine town, and Yahweh gives him super strength to escape the plot to kill him. Just keep the prostitutes out of the temple and don't let the priest's daughters be prostitutes, and it's fine. Anyhow, there appeared to me to be little in the way of true insight into what morality actually is and how to recognize the difference between moral acts and immoral acts. The laws were all over the map, disorganized, often conflicting, and privileged certain people over others. The system of judges that was supposedly handed to the people as the perfect will of an omniscient and omnibenevolent deity was inherently corrupt and prone to nepotism and injustice. I think I've rambled on for long enough. Well, that was essentially yeah. And maybe I've done that here in this hangout as well. But that was the last, and I've not heard back from him. And it's been, I think this is the longest period of lapse. Yeah, that was in April.
Oh shit!
So yeah,
you April. Go back to the drawing board for that one.
April 25th.
I kind of always. It's funny that the morality argument to me, because like morality, like when someone. Back when presuppositionalism was a thing, knowledge was a huge thing, right? And everybody always takes the sort of philosophical definitions and runs, like that's the be all end all, whatever. But I always had considered knowledge, right? This is just me personally, I guess, but as not just one type of thing. You know what I mean? It's like if I was learning to play guitar, it's not either I know how to play guitar absolutely, or you know what I mean. Like you gain knowledge over time with experience. There's different ways to get. You know what I mean? Like, and the same thing with morality. It's like, you build an ethical system, based on many things. You know what I mean? Like, why is it coalesce into this one quote unquote thing that it doesn't make any sense? It just that setup doesn't make any sense to me, I guess.
Well,
but. I don't know, but anyway, let's not get into morality, dude, because we're just about done.
Yeah.
Everyone's gonna be like falling asleep, and then they're not gonna go fucking morality. Let's let Skylar Fiction know. And then Skylar Fiction will be in here like fucking kill babies. Wait, slavery. No Christians are in here. Never mind.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I think that's about it, right?
Yep.
Are we good? Look at that. Under the gun, people.
That's what I've got.
Under the gun. Well, this was fun. I like this. Thank you, people, for showing up. My guest star, my dog, as always. I don't know where the fuck she went, but probably hiding under something. But anyway, thanks everyone for watching. This has been our 50th episode, which I totally caught me off guard until I actually created the room. But yeah, it was a good time. So hope to see you guys next time. Thank you.
Yay.
And share this motherfucking shit so we can, so we can be like, I don't know, famous. I'm just kidding. I'm just All right, later, guys.